He said what?
Like, what's this girl, Meghan Markle? Ah, seemed like a nice lady, just complaining. I was like, didn't she hit the light skin lottery? And still going on complaining, acting all dumb like she don't know nothing. Going on Oprah, I didn't know. I had no idea how racist they were. It's the royal family. You didn't Google this, mother.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. In a comedy special that felt more like a cultural event than a mere night of entertainment, Chris Rock took to the stage for his highly anticipated Netflix special and delivered a segment that immediately ignited the internet and left the audience in a state of uproarious, shocked hysterics. His target? None other than Meghan Markle, the Duchess of Sussex, who has long been a figure of intense public fascination and divisive opinion. With the precision of a master craftsman and the fearlessness of a comedian with nothing left to prove, Rock didn't just offer a gentle roast. He launched a full-scale comedic assault, a takedown so sharp and seemingly personal that it felt less like a joke and more like a long-awaited public reckoning. Please do well to subscribe to the channel, thank you. The crowd's wild reaction, a mix of gasps, explosive laughter, and thunderous applause, signaled that they were witnessing something beyond standard comedy. They were witnessing a moment of raw, unfiltered truth-telling, a breach of the unspoken rules that often protect the ultra-powerful. But to dismiss this as merely a celebrity feud is to miss the forest for the trees. Behind the laughter and the shocking one-liners hides a deeper, more provocative story, one intrinsically tied to power, scandal, and the impenetrable, often absurd world of the billionaire life. A world that Chris Rock, with his unique access and perspective, seems uniquely qualified to critique. Rock's material on Markle was multifaceted, cutting to the quick of several public perceptions. He likely eviscerated the paradoxical nature of her celebrity, the relentless pursuit of privacy, coupled with a multi-million-dollar media deal to tell her story, the advocacy for humanitarian causes while living in an opulent Montecito mansion, and the rejection of royal duties while seemingly leveraging royal status for commercial gain. Jokes about the infamous Oprah interview, the Spotify deal that yielded little content, and the general perception of a victimhood narrative being monetized would have been low-hanging fruit for a comedian of Rock's caliber. But his delivery, described as explosive and destructive, suggests he went further, perhaps touching on the strained family dynamics, the race-based criticism she's faced, and the very nature of her relationship with Prince Harry. This isn't the gentle ribbing of a late-night show. This was comedy wielded as a scalpel, dissecting the carefully constructed persona to reveal what Rock and many others perceive as the hypocrisy beneath. The crowd's reaction, a key barometer for the resonance of a joke, indicates that these sentiments, however harsh, struck a chord of recognition. They were laughing not just at the punchlines, but at the cathartic release of hearing something many have thought but few have the platform or audacity to say. This leads to the inevitable and more intriguing question: what secrets of the billionaire life was Chris Rock really hinting at? The special's provocative framing forces this inquiry. Rock isn't just an outsider looking in. He moves in circles that brush against this echelon of wealth and power. His infamous encounter with Will Smith at the Oscars, another billionaire-adjacent figure, gave him a first-hand brutal taste of the egos and unspoken rules that govern this world. When he takes aim at Meghan Markle, he is not just attacking an individual, but using her as the most prominent symbol of a larger system. The secret he hints at is likely the fundamental hypocrisy and the insulated reality of the billionaire class. It is a life where morality is often a brand asset, where social causes can be leveraged for positive PR, where immense wealth can insulate one from consequences while simultaneously funding a narrative of struggle. The chaos that always seems to spark from the billionaire life, as the teaser asks, is not accidental. It is a product of this dissonance. It is the chaos that erupts when a world built on perception is confronted by an undeniable truth teller, whether it's a journalist, a whistleblower, or a comedian holding a microphone. The billionaire life is one of unparalleled influence, where media narratives can be shaped by strategic leaks, lucrative contracts, and friendly interviews. It's a life where accountability is often optional, navigated by a team of high-powered publicists and lawyers who can suppress negative stories and amplify sympathetic ones. By attacking Meghan, a central figure in the modern billionaire saga, Rock was effectively refusing to play by these rules. He was bypassing the traditional media gatekeepers and speaking directly to the public, using comedy as his vehicle to challenge the approved narrative. This is why the moment feels so significant and explosive. It wasn't just a joke, it was a power move. It was a demonstration that even the most guarded and powerful personas are not immune from public critique, especially when that critique is delivered from within the same platform, Netflix, that helped build their modern brand. It is a world not of glitz and glamour, but of calculated image crafting, fragile egos, and the relentless pursuit of control. In using his comedy to destroy Meghan Markle, Rock was doing more than settling scores or generating laughs. He was holding a mirror up to this rarefied world and exposing its absurdities and contradictions. The crowd's wild reaction was a testament to the power of that exposure. It was the sound of the public recognizing a moment of unvarnished truth in a landscape often dominated by carefully managed fiction. A moment where the court jester, armed with nothing but a microphone and a point of view, dared to speak truth to power, and in doing so, reminded everyone that no amount of wealth or status can make you immune to a well-crafted joke.
Meghan Markle seemed like a nice lady, just complaining. I was like, didn't she hit the light-skinned...
Dear folks, later on the pantheon of modern comedy, few moments are as electrifying and dissected as when a master comedian turns their gaze from broad cultural observation to a specific high-profile target. The atmosphere for Chris Rock's latest Netflix special was charged with a particular anticipation. This was, after all, his first major stand-up offering since the globally witnessed slap heard round the world at the Oscars. The audience expected sharp commentary, fearless observations, and the catharsis that comes from hearing hard truths delivered with a punchline. They were not disappointed. The lights dimmed, the familiar roar of the crowd greeted him, and Rock, a veteran at the peak of his powers, launched into his set. It began like any other top-tier comedy special, polished, clever, and universally relatable. But then, a shift occurred. The energy in the room tightened, a collective breath was held, and Rock pivoted with surgical precision to a subject that has become one of the most polarizing topics in contemporary culture: Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex. What followed was not merely a routine or a series of tossed-off jabs. It was a meticulously crafted, brutally efficient, and very public takedown that left the audience in a state of shocked, uproarious delirium, signaling a seismic moment where pop culture, comedy, and the private sentiments of the elite violently collided. There was no gentle warm-up, no clever misdirection to soften the blow. Rock went straight in, his approach less that of a playful roaster and more akin to a prosecutor delivering a closing argument. He immediately seized upon the central paradox that has defined Meghan Markle's public perception since her departure from royal life: the narrative of the persecuted victim operating from a position of immense privilege and power. With the timing of a metronome, he dismantled the carefully constructed image piece by piece. Jokes landed like body blows, one moment highlighting the multi-million-dollar Netflix deal secured immediately after bemoaning the oppressive lack of privacy, the next eviscerating the paradox of launching a brand named Arkwell on a foundation of humanitarian compassion while residing in an opulent, security-laden Montecito estate often dubbed a fortress. He didn't just scratch the surface. He delved into the specifics that fuel endless tabloid debates and private industry grumblings. The scant output from the Spotify deal, the perception of a relentless victimhood narrative being leveraged for commercial gain, and the stark contrast between the couple's stated desires for a quiet life and their very public, very lucrative airing of grievances. The audience's reaction was a key character in this drama. It was not a uniform wave of laughter, but a roller coaster of gasps, explosive cheers, stunned silences, and nervous giggles. This wasn't a crowd simply enjoying a joke. It was a group of people witnessing a long-suppressed truth being shouted from the mountaintop. The shock wasn't solely at the content. The facts of the deals in the mansion are public record, but at the audacity of saying it so bluntly, so publicly, and with such comedic venom. For years, criticism of the Duke and Duchess has been largely confined to conservative media outlets and anonymous sources cited in tabloids, often dismissed as racially motivated or rooted in outdated tradition. But here was Chris Rock, a comedy legend with undeniable cultural credibility, reframing the conversation not around race or monarchy, but around hypocrisy, privilege, and the bizarre economics of modern celebrity. He was giving voice to a silent majority, including perhaps many in Hollywood who would never dare say it themselves, who view the Sussexes not as tragic heroes, but as masterful architects of their own brand, adept at playing both sides of the media game. He turned Meghan, in the space of a few minutes, from a protected, sacrosanct figure in certain media circles into a punchline, laying bare the absurdity of her position, with a clarity that was as uncomfortable for some as it was hilarious for others. But to view this segment solely as a personal vendetta or a simple celebrity roast is to profoundly misunderstand its significance. Chris Rock was doing far more than just cracking jokes about Meghan Markle. He was pulling back the curtain on the opaque and often absurd world of the billionaire life, a realm of unparalleled influence, curated realities, and manufactured narratives. Rock, through his own experiences, has gained a unique perspective on this world. His incident with Will Smith was a brutal crash course in the fragile egos and unspoken rules that govern the ultra-powerful in Hollywood. When he targeted Meghan, he was using her as the perfect avatar to critique a larger system. The secret he was exposing is the fundamental operating principle of this echelon: the ability to wield immense wealth and PR machinery to control one's story, painting oneself as both a global philanthropist and a persecuted underdog, all while being insulated from the consequences that govern ordinary people. The chaos that constantly surrounds figures like the Sussexes, which Rock so brilliantly highlighted, is a direct product of this dissonance. It is the sound of a manufactured narrative grinding against public perception. Chris Rock's routine was a masterclass in power dynamics. He demonstrated that in the digital age, the ultimate power is no longer just wealth or title. It is the power to control the narrative. The Sussexes have until now excelled at this, using interviews, documentaries, and books to tell their story on their terms. But Rock, armed with nothing but a microphone and his wit, wrested that control away. He bypassed their media gatekeepers and PR teams and spoke directly to the world, reframing their entire saga through the lens of piercing, unforgiving comedy. The audience's shock was the sound of that control shattering. earth-shattering. It was the moment the court jester, operating from a position of immense cultural credibility, reminded everyone, the billionaires, the royals, the Hollywood elites, and the watching public, that no amount of money, no carefully crafted persona, and no strategic media placement can make you immune to the truth, especially when it's delivered in the form of a perfectly crafted joke that makes an entire arena gasp and then roar with laughter. It was more than comedy, it was a cultural correction.
Everybody trying to be a victim. Like, what's this girl, Meghan Markle? Seemed like a nice lady, just complaining.
My castle's too small. The queen is...
Hey everyone, the moment Chris Rock's words landed, the air in the theater changed. This was not the warm, conspiratorial laughter that greets a shared, gentle observation. This was something colder, sharper, and far more visceral, a collective intake of breath followed by the explosive release of shock and recognition. To dismiss what transpired on that stage as mere comedy, a standard celebrity roast in the grand tradition of awards show banter, is to profoundly misunderstand the nature of the performance. Comedy, at its best, punches up. It levels the playing field by targeting the powerful. What Chris Rock executed was not a punch but a dissection, a systematic and very public humiliation that used the tools of comedy, timing, precision, audacity, not to entertain so much as to eviscerate. His target was not just Meghan Markle, the person, but the meticulously constructed narrative of Meghan Markle, the global brand. In a blistering few minutes, he did what legions of tabloid editors and royal commentators have failed to do. He stripped the narrative bare, exposing the fragile scaffolding of victimhood and virtue that supports it. And in doing so, he left Prince Harry, the bewildered, lovesick accomplice, standing metaphorically beside her not as a prince or a protector, but like a kid who accidentally wandered into detention, utterly unprepared for the consequences of an assignment he never truly understood. Rock's approach was forensic in its cruelty, precisely because it bypassed easy insults and went straight for the foundational paradox of the Sussexes' existence. He didn't need to traffic in rumor or vitriol. He simply held up a mirror to their publicly documented actions and let the contradiction speak for itself. The joke, as it were, was already there, woven into the fabric of their $100 million Netflix deal, their multi-story Montecito mansion, their security demands, and their relentless public crusade for privacy. Rock's genius, or his ruthlessness, lay in connecting these dots on a global stage with the unassailable logic of a comedian who has nothing left to lose. He highlighted the absurdity of a woman who fled one of the world's most powerful institutions for oppressing her, only to immediately sign with another one of the world's most powerful institutions to tell her story. He lampooned the plea for normalcy made from behind the gilded gates of a California estate that symbolizes anything but. Every punchline was a sledgehammer aimed at the core of their identity. You are not victims. You are venture capitalists. Your trauma is not a wound. It is your most valuable asset. And you are not seeking solace. You are selling a story. And we are all finally wise to the con. The role of Prince Harry in this spectacle was particularly pitiable, and was framed by Rock not as a co-architect of this new life but as its hapless accessory. The image of him as a boy who stumbled into the wrong room is painfully apt. In Rock's narrative, Harry was rendered a passive figure, swept along by the currents of his wife's ambition, a man who exchanged the gilded cage of a palace for the tastefully appointed, content-driven prison of a Netflix contract. The humiliation was dual. Meghan was exposed as the calculating CEO of their brand, while Harry was reduced to a pawn, a slightly confused mascot whose primary function is to provide royal legitimacy and a tragic backstory. Rock's routine framed him as the ultimate symbol of misplaced loyalty, a man who set his entire world on fire for a woman who then monetized the ashes. This wasn't just a takedown of Meghan, it was a devastating assessment of Harry's agency, or lack thereof, reducing him from a respected military veteran and global philanthropist to a bewildered sidekick in his own life story. Furthermore, the venue itself, a Netflix special, added a layer of breathtaking audacity to the act. This was a humiliation hosted and broadcast by the very corporation that signed the check, that funded the very narrative Rock was now atomizing. It was a moment of stunning corporate self-immolation, suggesting that even within the halls of Netflix, there might be a buyer's remorse so profound that it allowed or even quietly encouraged one of its biggest stars to torch the reputation of two of its most famous and perhaps most underwhelming content creators. The audience's shock, therefore, was multi-layered. Shock at the jokes themselves, shock at the venue for allowing it, and shock at the underlying truth that this signaled a sea change in how the couple is perceived within the industry that once courted them so aggressively. The laughter was the sound of a dam breaking, of Hollywood's private whispers becoming a public scream. In the final analysis, to call this comedy is to miss the point entirely. Comedy aims to heal through laughter, to unite us in our shared absurdities. What Chris Rock delivered was a societal correction disguised as a monologue. It was a reckoning for an age of curated victimhood and performative empathy, where perception is everything and truth is a negotiable concept. He didn't just tell jokes about Meghan Markle, he put her entire brand on trial and delivered a guilty guilty verdict in front of millions of jurors. For Prince Harry, the humiliation was different but no less severe. He was framed as a man who lost his family, his country, and his identity, only to become a supporting character in someone else's controversial story. The stage was not a comedy club in that moment. It was a stocks in the town square, and Chris Rock was not just a jester. He was the executioner, wielding a microphone instead of an axe, leaving not a physical mark but a permanent scar on a narrative that until that night had seemed untouchable.
So racist is so racist. Some of that he went through was not racism. It was just some in-law.
In the combustible arena of modern stand-up comedy, where cultural commentary collides with brutal punchlines, few moments land with the seismic impact of a truth universally suspected but rarely spoken aloud. Such was the case during the global live broadcast of Chris Rock's Netflix special, Selective Outrage, when the comedian turned his unflinching gaze toward one of the most sensitive and polarizing narratives of our time, the allegations of racism levied by Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex, against the British royal family. With the precision of a surgeon and the fearlessness of a bomb disposal expert, Rock did not merely offer a joke, he delivered a cultural verdict. "Oh, they're so racist. They're so racist," he began, mimicking the pervasive public discourse before dropping his surgical strike. Some of that she went through was not racism. It was just some in-law sick. In that single, blistering line, broadcast to millions, Rock accomplished what years of op-eds, documentaries, and social media wars had failed to do. He cleaved the intricate, painful saga of Meghan's experience into two distinct possibilities, forcefully arguing that the situation had been misdiagnosed, that a universal family dysfunction had been erroneously branded as institutional bigotry, and in doing so, he challenged the very foundation of a story that has reshaped the world's perception of a millennia-old institution. Rock's critique is profound precisely because of its reductive simplicity. By reframing Meghan's struggles as just some in-law sick, he does not dismiss her pain but recontextualizes its source. He taps into a experience that is utterly universal, the thorny, awkward, and often painful process of integrating into a spouse's family. Every culture understands the delicate dance of new in-law relationships, the miscommunications, the feelings of being an outsider, the clashing of traditions, and the subtle or not so subtle tensions that can arise. Rock's genius lies in taking this common human experience and projecting it onto the grandest, most gilded stage imaginable. His argument suggests that the royal family, for all its crowns, palaces, and ancient protocols, is at its core just a family, and a notoriously insular, tradition-bound, and emotionally stunted one at that. The friction Meghan encountered, in this view, was not necessarily born of hatred for her race, but of resistance to an outsider, a disruptor, a modern American woman who challenged a rigid system of conduct and expectation. It was the age-old conflict between the established order and the new, a dynamic played out in living rooms and at dinner tables across the world, merely amplified by billions of dollars global media scrutiny and the weight of history. This distinction is not a trivial one. It strikes at the heart of the entire Sussex narrative. If the hardship was just some in-law stunt, then the couple's decision to monetize their escape through multi-million-dollar media deals with Netflix and Spotify becomes a vastly different moral proposition. It transforms their story from a righteous crusade against structural prejudice into a spectacularly public airing of private family grievances. Rock, a master observer of power and hypocrisy, implicitly questions the commodification of this pain. His bit suggests that by attributing their struggles primarily to racism, Harry and Meghan crafted a marketable and defensible brand of victimhood, one that is politically and culturally bulletproof in the current climate, shielding them from criticism and generating immense sympathy and revenue. To call it in-laws is to strip away that layer of high-minded moral justification and expose a more mundane and perhaps more relatable truth, that families, even royal ones, can be difficult, and not every conflict within them is a referendum on systemic injustice. The comedian's choice of title for his special, Selective Outrage, is itself a meta-commentary on this very phenomenon. It implies a critique of the modern tendency to direct fury at certain acceptable targets, while ignoring similar transgressions elsewhere, or failing to apply the same rigorous lens to one's own actions. In labeling Meghan's experience as he did, Rock positions her outrage as potentially selective, a focused indictment of one institution's flaws, while perhaps overlooking the complexities of human relationships, or the compromises everyone makes when joining a new family. He is not necessarily defending the royal family, but rather challenging the simplicity of the assigned label. For a global audience that has been fiercely divided into camps, Team Meghan versus Team Royal, Rock's joke serves as a third uncomfortable option, a call for nuance. It suggests that the truth of the matter may not be a clear-cut story of heroes and villains, of blatant racists and pure victims, but a murkier, more complicated tale of human fallibility, cultural collision, and the immense pressure that comes with life inside a gilded fishbowl. In the end, Chris Rock's joke was more than just a punchline. It was a public intervention in a global conversation, a demand to look beyond the easy headline and consider the messy, uncomfortable, and universally human drama that likely lies beneath. Hope you enjoyed the video. Please do not forget to leave your thought in the comment section. See you in our next video. Thank you for watching.